Our final featured reader for tonight, Molly Schulman. She's read for the open mic here before, so we're really grateful to have the opportunity to feature her tonight. A little bit about Molly. Molly Schulman was born in California. She grew up in New York, lived in Georgia for a nice while, now lives in Texas. After receiving her BA in creative writing from the New School, she worked in publishing as an in-house editor at the Friedrich Agency. In 2013, she left the agency to pursue her own writing, performing in professional freelance editing and author consultation services. In September, she will be the guest author and instructor at L'Avventura Writing Residency at Villa Cantoni in Northeast Italy. And there's a few of these floating around with some pretty interesting information. Most recently, she was a Ragdale writer in residence, where she worked on her novel in progress, a multi-generational tale of brothers, sisters, and show business called How to Cry on Cue. Her favorite ice cream flavor is M&M ice cream cookie sandwich.
Thank you Malvern Books and all of you. You guys were great, the open mic. Hey friends. Everyone was just really wonderful tonight, so I'm happy to close the night with excerpts from the novel, which is called How to Cry on Cue. And let's see, what we need to know for this first section, we are in the late 1960s, getting into the early 70s in Los Angeles, and there is a Yiddish word called, it's balabost, which means housewife, so if you hear that, that's what it means. In Gail's final year of junior high, she got expelled for vandalism. It was the end of the year, though, when expulsion was particularly ineffective. But expulsion was what she faced when she returned a year's worth of library books, plays mostly, with every flyleaf defaced by doodles. She doodled one face, and she doodled it everywhere. A pouty young thing with loopy lashes, tendrils aplenty, and an ink dot mole. She appeared in every single book, identical in expression, from rendering to rendering. And beside her on the page, in every single book, in studied cursive, would be a list of names, the names of Gail's 6 imagined children. She wanted 3 boys and 3 girls, and she wanted to be a beautiful young mom, a pouty young thing with loopy lashes and tendrils aplenty. It's what she'd seen on TV, on Donna Reed and Brady Bunch, and it looked so fun. It was only a matter of time before she'd meet Jason, who loved how confidently she carried herself, despite her flimsy frame, like a woman trapped inside a kid trapped inside a woman. And he'd compliment her on her yellow dress and her high pony, and she liked him well enough, and that was that. She wore pink at their wedding, location apropos, as they married at the Beverly Hills Hotel, the Pink Palace as it was called. Incidentally, Gail's senior prom occurred just 2 weeks prior in the same opulent ballroom, the Crystal Room. She was just 17. Jason's drippy parents, Murray and Sylvia, were elated to see their eldest of 4 boys marrying such a sweet, if not eccentric, young Jewish girl. But no one was as pleased as Gail's wide and tired mother, Beatrice, otherwise known as Barbie. Widowed now for so many years, metabolizing her continued grief in ample inches across the vast expanse of her body. Her baby girl was about to become a fine balabost, about to live the life that she herself had lost. As Barbie walked her daughter down the meticulously vacuumed paisley aisle, as all good widows must do, she could see in Jason's eyes, and even in the darkened Ashkenazi half-moons beneath them, that he was happy. And more than happy, she saw in him a look of relief, a little bit of foof in the slack of his smile, the lack of vanity in the way his pointy chin bent down and creased and doubled atop his long, pale neck. Their honeymoon was nearby and efficient. They road tripped just an hour south to Palm Springs, where they played boggle, skinny dipped, and conceived their first of 6, Max. The next 9 months were spent playing house in their UCLA dental school student housing, Gail wearing yarn in her hair like Cindy Brady, bib-like dresses, and trying her hand at ambitious, multicultural dishes, like chop suey and baklava. Jason would come home after class and he would kiss her pregnant belly and her cheek, and he would tell her that the chop suey was delish, and then he would as silently as possible go barf in the bathroom because he hated milk, and for whatever reason, the chop suey was predominantly milk. And Gail would barf too, because she was pregnant and nauseated, but also because she had eaten a bag of red vines earlier. The whole damn bag, she'd chide herself. And even though she was pregnant and eating whole damn bags of anything would be deemed socially permissible, she felt guilty and grotesque. It was in their first few years of marriage, though Jason was certainly on his way to making some money, and though his parents, Murray and Sylvia, and even Barbie, were generous with their handouts, Gail and Jason wanted more. They had a joint idea of what life would be like, and that idea included a sprawling home with fine furnishings and a baby grand piano, though neither could play very well, and a Spanish tile pool, though neither could swim very well. On some of their first and favorite dates, they just drive around the different neighborhoods in Los Angeles, blasting Neil Sedaka, commenting to one another flirtatiously somehow, like some sort of residential foreplay, when the street signs turned from blue to white, and how that indicated the shifting sheen of door knockers, the increasing height of hedges. When they found a house that they both really loved, it was usually those vast pastel deco Victorians that they agreed upon. They'd park across the street and dim the headlights, slouching and squinting in their seats, trying to see inside the lit living rooms and kitchens of strangers. There was a thrill in this benign stalking. And though they could never quite make out what kind of tile or pianos or people were inside, they could instead make out, which is what they did in the shadows of other people's homes. So when they were hamstering around in that first UCLA apartment, daydreaming up houses with sunrooms and mudrooms, oh my, Gail came across an ad in the Penny Saver for that one kind of lucrative opportunity that might help expedite Operation Vast Victorian House. Just married, starting a family, need cash? ABC's newest game show, The Newlywed Game, needs you. Gail grabbed the pencil from her top knot and wrote down the details of the open casting call on the corner of her recipe card for chicken cordon bleu. The following weekend, Gail and Jason wore perfect outfits. Coats that said, "I'm rich enough to be cute and cute enough to be on TV," but shoes that said, "I really need this cash." The 60-something casting director, Doug, pug-like in face but slender in body, recognized Jason. Doug and his wife belonged to Temple Emmanuel, where Jason's parents frequented on Fridays and flaunted wallet-sized photos of their 4 heathen sons who just couldn't make it to services again. The whole congregation had known about the notoriously but somehow lovably heretic Spiegelman boys, always out tending to their wives and lives, but never ever at Temple. Jason Spiegelman, is it? Doug asked with a knowing smile. Son of Murray and Sylvia? Big brother of Zachary and Gideon and Josh? My wife and I belong to Temple Emmanuel, he said, his pug mouth curling over itself, lip over lip. We've met your folks. I'll tell you, those are some proud parents, Murray and Sylvia. Always my boys this and my boys that. And this, he fanned out his hand as if about to recite the contents of a dessert cart. This must be Gail. Hi, Gail. Well, hi, Gail answered, delighted by the unexpected chumminess and the reassuring feeling of, we got this. And this was how Gail and Jason first learned the valuable life lesson of how to get cast in things. Reading the Penny Saver and preparing for open casting calls by wearing perfect outfits wouldn't be enough. No, you had to know someone. And preferably, you had to know someone who knew someone who went to Temple Emmanuel with Murray and Sylvia. Over the next few years, Gail and Jason appeared on 11 different game show pilots. They were newlyweds, high rollers, name that tuners. They were deal makers and double darers, no whammies. They got their 16-speed blender and their Queen Anne cutlery and their teakwood table trays. They got their sea glass platters and their swag lamps, their spindle chair, and their crockery cooker. Jill got her Where Is You Work dryer, and Jason got his Citizens brand clock radio. When Max was born, it was Gail and Jason's win on Password that got him his Punch Me toys and his Hippity Hops and his crib. Later, the family won an all-inclusive cruise to Tahiti, but on account of Gail's second pregnancy, they traded it in for cash, which was in 1973, a lot of cash. And this is how the Spiegelmans began their amassing of mass. And this is how the Spiegelmans began their swift, though gradual dip with sincerity and longing and a dash of avarice into the business of television, into show business. And now we are going to move along. Several years later, 4 of the 6 children that Gail wanted have been born. And the third child, Hope, she is about 6 years old at the time, and she is kind of beginning the world of child acting. And another Yiddish word is potchkiing, which means just kind of dilly-dallying around. There was nothing quite as disorienting than waking up in the middle of the night to the sound of her own recorded voice, muffled and hiccupy through the plastic Fisher-Price speaker, reciting lines like, "Becca, you don't even know me," and "This borrowing stuff's just gotta stop." Gail had insisted that this was the best and only way for Hope to prepare adequately for her auditions. It wasn't enough to run lines during the day. No, she had to practice in her sleep, too, letting the after-school special or Kellogg's commercial dialogue subliminally nestle its way into her subconscious. Now just press play, the big green button, and let the lines really soak in while you sleep, baby, and by morning you'll be my little movie star. Gail had said, her voice all a sing-song, as she tucked Hope beneath her blankie and moved her beloved Teddy Ruxpin to the side to make room for the tape recorder. The method really never made memorizing lines any easier, but something about the tape recorder made Hope feel very adult. It was like her own very Walkman or car radio. Only the stations never came in clear, and she was sleeping, and there was just one track stuck on repeat forever, and it was her own grating narration of imaginary Beccas and borrowing. Hope was always startled by the lack of conviction in her own voice. Maybe it was just the way the tape recorder picked it up, she reasoned. Tape recorders were always cringeworthy. But maybe she realized one early morning, just as the sun was coming up, and she could hear her mom potchkeying with breakfast in the kitchen, maybe she just wasn't very talented. Maybe she wouldn't, by morning, be mommy's little movie star. But the thought left her head as soon as the smell of waffles entered her nose. She rolled over and pressed the big blue button to stop the recording. She said good morning to Teddy Ruxpin. He said good morning back, and she wiggled out of bed. Now we're going to flash forward again. We're going to stick with Hope. She is now a preteen, and she's a fairly successful child actress. She is in a sitcom, and the scene takes place in her dressing room on set. And it's also worth noting that this section was written before and certainly takes place before Scott Baio became a Trump enthusiast, because he used to be America's hero, I think, and Hope thinks. All right. It would have been good advice from anyone, but the advice came from Scott Baio, Chachi, Charles in goddamn charge. Like every other living girl and woman and man and boy, in 1987, Hope had a crush on Scott Baio. He was handsome in that unreasonable, incomputable sort of way. He had the sweetness and alertness, the perfectly oval malt ball eyes of some sort of hungry, only mildly wounded baby woodland creature, and yet the elegance and grace and shoulders of the most debonair gentleman. And yet the slight snarl of the lip, the heavy brown brow, the feathered bang, the bad, cool stoicism of someone who cut Jim and called his mom by her first name and said things like, "That is so ace." He looked like he could bench press you, but first he might prepare you a cup of tea, and he wouldn't need to ask if you took cream or sugar. He'd just know. He crossed his arms a lot in photos, an expertly showcase of his always smooth, always rounded forearms, and his slender, though undoubtedly strong, tan, trustworthy-looking hands. How were his hands so tan? You wanted to shake his tan hand and hold his tan hand and give him an enthused but not too enthused high five. You imagined the fine shade of crimsony lilac that a high five from Scott Baio would leave behind on your hand. It would sizzle a little, and it would be warm and dotty. It would look a little like uncooked sausage, but you put that thought directly out of your mind because Scott Baio was not like uncooked sausage. And if you could somehow laminate your own hand promptly after contact to preserve the perfection, you would. And you would want to give him a hug, of course, to feel the certain softness of his crew neck sweatshirt, the hardness of his profoundly teenaged pectorals. And you couldn't even fully muster a fantasy of a kiss because his mouth looked altogether too soft, too art-like, his lips like the velvet red rope at the museum separating viewer from masterpiece. Please do not touch. Crush was too mild a word. It was an epidemic, a dictatorship. He was in charge. So when Hope was sitting, slumping in her makeup chair, shoveling mini peanut butter cracker sandwiches into her face In between blush strokes and Scott Baio entered the room. It was a moment so extraordinary and startling, so seismic, that she wondered if perhaps she had fallen asleep and begun to dream, or perhaps she had died and entered the gates of heaven, or perhaps she was still awake and alive, covered in cracker crumbs and blush crumbs and sweat, and this was hell. He sauntered. Scott Baio sauntered, one foot in front of the other, like a real, actual human being, toward the long mirror bank where Hope was sitting, slumping, trying desperately not to pee. Please don't pee, please don't pee, please don't pee. He was getting closer, watching himself in the mirror get closer. Was he stupefied by his own appearance too? Had to be, Hope thought. But what was going on in her brain couldn't exactly be called thinking, no, it was more like broiling. Was it hot in here? It was hot in here. It was downright tropic. Hope wondered if she was imagining it entirely. Maybe this wasn't Scott Baio. Maybe Scott Baio just had a really convincing stand-in, and this was his really convincing stand-in looking for a home. The micro thought comforted Hope for a half second. Phew, it's not Scott Baio. Couldn't be. Scott Baio does not walk this earth, and he would never ever be in my dressing room, and he would never ever say hi to Tanya, my makeup lady. He said hi to Tanya, Hope's makeup lady. And he would never ever pull a chair up right next to me and kick up his studly white Velcro high-top Reeboks onto the vanity. And he would never in 1,100,000,000,000,000,000 centuries ever say in his human being voice to me, hey, you're that girl from the robot show, right? Hey, you're that girl from the robot show, right? Hope had zero faculties. She did not speak or move or smile or swallow the peanut butter cracker chunk that she did not even realize was still resting on the inside of her cheek. Tanya nodded on Hope's behalf. And then his mouth started moving, and there was sound coming out. And he was saying something to Hope, raspy and almost edible. His voice sounded serious, and Hope wondered what in the world he was saying and why it sounded so serious. Was she in trouble with Scott Baio? Her instinct was to look up at Tanya for translation, as if Scott Baio spoke Basque or Moldovan or the fairest, rarest, loveliest dead romance language of them all, Baio. But then, like a cartoon anvil coming straight for her freckly forehead or the enchanted snap of a hypnotist's fingers, it suddenly occurred to Hope that Chachi was speaking to her, and she better wake the ace up and listen. She tuned in just as he was wrapping up whatever it was he was saying. So just remember, kiddo, he said sternly, kindly, gorgeously, don't let your folks take what's yours, okay? You did all this work, not them, and you deserve to see every penny. And then he evaporated. Hope did not process him getting up or saying bye or sauntering away. She did not process the way his real-life butt looked in real-life Levi's. She did not process what he said, but she sort of did. And she started to regain the feeling in her body and in her face, and she was so happy to realize she hadn't peed, and she felt her tongue in her mouth, and she felt the peanut butter cracker chunk in her cheek, and she chewed. Tanya swirled her around in her seat, studied her tableau. Okie doke, Tanya squealed, mascara time. And to finish up the evening, she is now an adult. Probably unsurprisingly, she is no longer an actress. In fact, she ran away from home when she was 18 years old with the cameraman on one of her shows. So she has kind of abandoned that previous life. And now in this following scene, she's leaving that husband. She had to run away again. She didn't want to run away, and yet here she was again, running away. She'd grown good at it, knew how to cover her bases, how to corroborate stories among friends and coworkers. Last I heard from her, she was on her way to Trader Joe's, they'd say. And she knew how to empty her account incrementally, weeks in advance, so that the bank wouldn't question suspicious activity. And she knew how to accidentally toss her cell phone out a moving car window, directly in the path of an Entenmann semi. The house was in her name, but what good was a house anyway? The mortgage was miraculously paid off, with no thanks to him, and she hated the wallpaper in the guest bathroom, and she hated the way Ron insisted on putting tea bags down the drain, and she hated the way he punched through so many walls, each room adorned with fish-shaped cavities of crunchy, decomposing plaster. So she left. And she left it to him, the house. She thought it might be a fair consolation prize for when he learned that she was not at Trader Joe's, for when he learned that she was not coming back. She knew just where to go, the Oakwood. She had never been there before, but she knew of many who had. Something about it seemed so full of promise, so welcoming, and so homey. She wondered if there was an age cutoff, some sort of "you must be this tall to ride this ride" sign in reverse upon entry. She was always so jealous of the kids who got to go here to the Oakwood, the kids who flew out for pilot season, who relished in the very phrase, pilot season, the kids who ditched their homework and their dads and their piano lessons, the kids who actually wanted it, craved it like ice cream sandwiches, who grew up in places like Adrian, Michigan, and counted down the days until the National Oscar Mayer Wiener Commercial Contest came through town. And when year after year that bulbous, triumphant Wienermobile drove off with the one redheaded kid in town, dimpled and adorable and precocious and not at all schwitzy with nerves like all the other hopefuls, these were the kids who would beg their conveniently bored mothers to please, please, please jump provincial ship and take them to Hollywood, to please, please, please sign them up for acting classes, to please, please, please get them on TV. How neat it would have been to want it, Hope thought. How different it would have been. She wanted to be those kids, the kids who wanted. And of course, these were the same kids who wanted to be Hope. Hope who was already on TV. Hope who didn't even need acting classes because she could just learn the ropes on set. Hope who lived in Hollywood with her family, in a house with a driveway and a yard and a mailbox, not in a pre-furnished, criminally expensive studio apartment at the Oakwood, a full-service housing community for child actors. It was marketed as just being minutes from all the major studios, when really it was several LA traffic miles away. And yet the Oakwood was where all these aspiring child actors would come, wide-eyed and pigtailed, waiting for their big breaks, tirelessly taking group classes like how to cry on cue without using onions, and how to run yourself like a business so you don't run yourself out of the business. And this was when all the real child actors like Hope were already busy at work, shuffling around sitcom sound stages in stiff colored overalls, taking 5 in their honey wagons, biting their clear polished nails, eating craft services cheese cubes, and getting paid for all of it. The Oakwood apartments came with a Murphy bed and carpet beetles and a hot plate that tended not to get very hot. The American dream, Hollywood, or at the very, very least, Oakwood. As Hope drove up to the sign now, so many years later, the Oakwood, she reminded herself, what good was a house anyway? The Oakwood had a few buildings not designated for child actors, but for the transient, Holly weird type instead, the aspiring writers with their manillas full of spec scripts, the traveling sound technicians with little to no nesting tendencies whatsoever. These rooms were a hair less expensive, but still equipped with beds, real, not Murphy, and Mr. Coffee's. She paused at the entrance, not knowing which area would be more appropriate for her stay. She was no longer a child nor actor, but wasn't she still a child actor? She felt she was. She felt she wasn't. She consulted her bloated needlepoint carpet bag in the front seat as if it might speak to her, as if it might help her decide. It was all she brought with her, and at that exact moment, pulling into the Oakwood, she could not recollect a single thing she had packed. She veered left, following the sign for the leasing office. She expected to see wafy teens reading sides, wafy moms sucking down Diet Cokes, chubby, by industry standards, kids tiptoeing to the vending machine in secret. But everything was still. The grassy chlorine didn't budge a single ripple, and the palms stood tall and dry and mean. Perhaps the kids these days wanted it so bad that they were actually out at auditions, or in their rooms getting beauty sleep. Perhaps the kids wanted it so bad that they were in the library, brushing up on Brecht and Brando and Bacall. Perhaps child acting was no longer so insane. Perhaps these were just normal, nice kids with normal, nice moms trying to do something different and artistic and true. Perhaps not, though. Hope just hoped that no one would recognize her. She figured they wouldn't. She wondered if they would. Thank you.
Thank you so much. We're so grateful for all of our featured readers and open micers tonight, for another fun and exciting and delicious ice cream. Yeah, can't even think. I'm like processing. Of course, we're grateful for Malvern Books. I say it every month, but this wouldn't be possible without this space and the space wouldn't be here if it wasn't for all of you voracious readers coming in and buying books and asking for recommendations and supporting your local bookstore. So we're really grateful to have the space and opportunity to put on this show.
Next month is our 2-year anniversary. We cannot.
If he was a baby, it would be a 2-year-old baby.
We have a toddler together.
Yeah.
Terrible twos.
Awful.
Terrific twos, rather.
Don't have a 2-year-old. Yeah, wow, 2 years. What are we doing?
So it's on the 4th Friday of June, which is the 23rd, I think. It's going to be a big open mic, no particular featured readers because we want to celebrate the community, so all of y'all are welcome to come participate. There's going to be music, and I hope a screen printer to screen print the logo onto shirts for y'all. But no promises yet. I'm really trying. But it's going to be really fun. So
Yeah. And of course, ice cream.
oh yeah, there's always going to be ice cream.
Yeah, we really just want to like have a fun hang, like
a big birthday party.
yeah. So yay! Make sure you're following Malvern Books on Facebook or Instagram and